We are now live.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Governing Board of the King County Regional Homeless Authority. I'm King County Executive Dow Constantine, and this is the authority's new governing board. Thank you to our colleagues at the City of Seattle for allowing us to use City Hall for those who are attending in person today. We begin every meeting by rooting ourselves in our theory of change, and it reads, if we create
Progress.
it does not read that. It says, if we create a homelessness response system that centers people with lived experience of homelessness, then we will be able to respond to the needs and eliminate inequities in order to end homelessness for all. We acknowledge that King County is located on the unceded traditional land of Coast Salish peoples, and we honor this land and its people, past and present, and are committed to directing and funding resources to organizations led by and in support of Native and Indigenous people. Thank you all for being here. Austin, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely, Chair. Member Constantine?
Here.
Member Barone?
Here.
Member Balducci?
Here.
Member McWhorter Jr.?
Here.
Member Burney?
Here.
Member Prince?
Here.
Member Backus?
Here.
Member Moore?
Present.
Member Harrell?
Here.
Member Nelson?
Present.
And Member Green?
Here.
Chair, we are all here.
All right, the first item of business is to establish a chair pro tem of the governing board just for today's meeting. We expect to elect permanent co-chairs after the adoption of our bylaws next month. Are there any nominations for chair pro tem? Board Member Balducci.
Would I like to nominate somebody? Do I get to pick
Yes.
randomly? I
Yes.
nominate Board Member Burney.
Angela, you want to chair the meeting?
Nice.
You should nominate me. She doesn't want to chair the meeting.
I nominate Board Member Constantine.
She's right over
Sorry,
there.
I wasn't scripted for this.
Clearly no one was. Would anyone like to second my nomination?
Second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Asking once more. All those in favor of electing myself to be the chair pro tem for the purposes of running today's meeting, please say aye.
There are no
Aye.
nays? Aye.
You can vote no if you want. Those opposed say no. All right, then I will do so. We now move to the CEO updates provided by Dr. Kelly Kinnison, who is also joined by co-chairs of the Continuum of Care Board for a quick introduction. Kelly, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today. It's been 4.5 months since I began my role as CEO at KCRHA. I've engaged with over 100 external partners, asking for insight and advice and feedback, going to see their services in action and hearing about their opportunities and challenges. I've heard loud and clear that our funders, partners, and service providers need KCRHA to operate with a high degree of excellence and consistency, and that we should focus on building relationships throughout the region so we can successfully collaborate and build an equitable homelessness response system. In response, KCRHA recently held our first annual open house event to invite partners into our offices to meet face-to-face with our staff and learn more about what KCRHA is doing and our hopes for the future. Over 120 external partners from throughout the region attended the event. We appreciate all of you who were able to come and support and enthusiasm that you expressed to me and to the staff. It really means a lot to this team. It was also a really great professional development opportunity for our staff Nearly half of the organization has been here less than a year. So it was a really valuable onboarding experience as well. Internally, I've been assessing and taking action to ensure the health of the agency by ensuring we have the appropriate processes and systems in place. That is long-term work, but we've already gotten started. Early in 2025, we will ask you to work with us on KCRHA's annual work plan. The recommendations that we'll bring to you are informed by the 5-year plan, the Department of Commerce's new State of Washington Homeless and Housing Strategic Plan, and guidance from the Continuum of Care Board, service providers, and other partners. KCRHA leadership's assessment of the internal pillars we need to strengthen to deliver results. And I look forward to talking to each of you about your priorities when we meet over the next few weeks. As we engage with you on the annual plan, we understand the importance of data in making informed decisions regarding the homelessness response system. As in previous years, this month the governing board will receive a report summarizing key system data for Q3 2023 through Q3 of 2024. Beginning in 2025, I'd like to work with you on a plan to use data in new ways to track program and system performance and to share key metrics regularly throughout the year in alignment with our COC and HUD reporting requirements, and to address the questions you have about our system performance. Using data to develop funding recommendations, new procurements, and our work to support providers is critical to building the equitable homelessness response system that our region needs. And I know it can be really challenging to get through all of the data we have on the system. And so appreciate you coming along on that journey with us. Today, you're going to hear from our finance team about KCRHA's 2025 proposed budget. This is the budget we've worked on with many of you throughout 2024, first by receiving our budget marks from the city and county funders, then working with our former implementation board to approve a proposed budget that then went to the city and county to go through their budget processes. What James and Tiffany will present today is the results of those votes. Thank you very much. And as you know, we begin renewing contracts with service providers in anticipation of this 2025 funding, so there is no gap in services, and that process is well underway. In 2025, I'd also like to work with you on developing new ways to do our budget. Many of our contracts need to be updated and should be updated on a regular basis to reflect what we know about individuals and families we're serving, what they need, what services they need, and what it costs to provide quality services. So we'll be diving more into the budget in January's meeting. In addition to the budget, I know the region's response to severe weather is a critical concern to you and all of our communities. The severe weather response is highly collaborative across King County. I think it's one of the success stories from the regional approach. Our planning team meets frequently with all human services staff and providers to improve our systems and processes and create a robust severe weather response. During activations, KCRHA is in constant communication with partners across the county, including shelter operators, city staff, and the public, to help direct people to shelters open on any given night. We have just awarded or are in the process of awarding additional severe weather funds for response in the East and South King County. We very much appreciate the additional funds for seasonal and severe weather provided by both councils, and we'll be working with you on the plan to distribute them. And finally, as we progress in all of this critical work, I look forward to working alongside the Continuum of Care Board to continue improving the system. The COC board's contributions are really vital to providing our community with effective, compassionate, and lasting solutions. I'm pleased to share that we completed the HUD's Notice of Funding Opportunity application 2 days early this year. And this one was particularly notable for a couple of reasons. We saw a lot of interest from the community in partnering on the rating process, and we collaborated in some new and more robust ways across systems with other partners. So I'd love to invite our COC Advisory Board co-chairs to introduce themselves, and we can start with Ruby Romero.
Actually, I will be starting us off briefly. Thank you, Dr. Kennison.
Thanks, Dorsal.
And thank you, Governing Board. Good morning. My name is Dorsal Plants, and I have the honor of introducing myself as the co-chair of the COC Board. Now more than ever, King County must serve as a beacon on the hill, demonstrating compassion, innovation, and most of all, curiosity. To address this challenge, we must not only work together, but we must also find ways to center the voices of those with lived experience alongside those with experience providing services. And I can personally attest to that challenge as somebody who has both lived experience as someone who was homeless and has been a provider of service to the homeless. And as I do this work, I constantly feel a war in my head. When I speak as a person with lived experience, I hear the property manager in my head telling me all the reasons why what I want won't work. But as a program manager here in King County, I was never able to make a shelter that the homeless person who was Dorsal would have accepted. And so what does it mean for us to truly provide just and compassionate services here in King County? I agree with Dr. Kennison that one of the primary steps for that will be leveraging the data to understand our community's needs and to track the effectiveness of our interventions. This will include not only the quantitative data that HMIS collects, but also the qualitative data that is the lived experience, not just of the people accessing services, but the people distributing those services. The COC Board is able to provide that context with our members not only having lived experience as homeless individuals, but also as experience as providers, funders, and voters. One of the ways that the COC Board is working on this is through the System Performance Committee. And we are very eager to share some of the solutions that we have been working on there in partnership with KCRHA. And now I'm very excited to turn it over to my co-chair to introduce herself and discuss more of the ideas in which we can collaborate on.
Thanks, Dorsal. Yeah, sorry, we had it planned the other way. I apologize about that. But thank you, Dr. Kennison, for sharing your time on the agenda today. Hello, Governing Board. I'm honored to be a part of your first meeting. My name is Ruby Tuesday Romero, and as stated, me and Dorsal are both co-chairs of the Continuum of Care Board. Our board is elected by the continuum itself, the membership that makes up our continuum of care, which per the program rule is service providers, individuals, and relevant organizations within a geographical region, and who are working towards ending homelessness. So a little bit about my background. I'm a street musician by trade. I'm an event organizer at night and a policy analyst by choice. I've lived in King County since 1991, and I was raised in a restaurant. I grew up half a block west of Aurora on 87th, and I attended Roosevelt High School. Now, Mayor, I've heard that you might be a Garfield guy, so I don't think that we were in school at the same time, and nor did I play football, so hopefully we won't have too much of hopefully the green and gold won't get in the way. All right, great. Jokes aside, there is a point in housing instability where you free fall into homelessness, whether that's what you intended or not. And most often it's never intended, like for the record. But after surviving intimate partner violence, I learned the harsh reality of what it meant to qualify for services within this system. I wasn't vulnerable enough to access services, but I was still homeless, and I was still surviving intimate partner violence. So I continued to live unsheltered for as long as that eviction stayed on my record and hindered me from signing a lease. However, today we are here as your colleagues now, and as two co-parts of a board that is nationally recognized as having the most lived and living experience on it. And also, we're beholden to our constituents, the service providers, the individuals, and the respective agencies and we're accountable to the people experiencing homelessness. So Dorsal and I have said that we feel pretty confident in the board that we have. We feel everybody has really great expertise to provide in so many different aspects, not just around homelessness. So I'm encouraged that the governing board is interested in the continuum's work surrounding system performance. Our system performance committee is the governing body of the HMIS system, or the Homeless Management Information System. We work closely with KCRHA's data team and BitFocus to understand how data tells a story. And I can tell you that we can develop local metrics as a part of our committee's purview. And as a member, I think that that's exactly what we're focusing on right now. So it's a great time to dig in together and really start to develop what we want to be calculating and what we want to be measuring here locally. And yeah, however, I got to leave some of this like for the next meeting. So I want to make sure that I wrap up with just, you know, that experiencing housing insecurity and extreme poverty are different. Like every experience is different. And the exits out of homelessness are like human DNA. No two are alike. So thank you guys so much. And I appreciate the time today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Plants and Ms. Romero. We really appreciate your partnership, and the board will be receiving a briefing on all of the continuum of care work in the first quarter next year. Thank you for your support and partnership. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about my report or a continuum of care.
Do board members have questions of Dr. Kinnison? Board member Balducci.
Thank you. First of all,
Oh,
welcome.
wait, are we still using first names? I guess so. Claudia.
Thank you. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for serving and for sharing what you did. And I look forward to working with you. My question is for Dr. Kinnison about the severe weather response. So in parts of King County, obviously, we had a very severe weather incident since our last meeting. And it was interesting. It was very unique in that it hit different parts of King County very, very differently, and some parts very hard. Other parts barely saw a flicker in their power. And so we learned quite a bit from this. It was unique in a number of ways. I understand the direction of the wind was different than usual, which is what caused so many trees to fall in some places. But we held a post-storm discussion in a council committee at King County. And I wanted to share that two of the biggest takeaways I took from that discussion with power companies, emergency responders, a variety of different folks was, first, I think there is a need for some regional consistency around public communications. I think in some places it went really, really well. In other places, it didn't filter up through the elected officials where we can push out to our own constituencies. I think from agencies to the people they served, it probably went fine. But when it came to like the broad public push, some places great, some places not so great. And I think I would diagnose that as being more about different forms of government sitting around this table have different levels of connection directly to our operations. So I would just love to work with KCRHA going forward to come up with some templates or some kind of standard means of communication that we can use to push out when there is a big storm coming in or an impact. I feel like there's some work we could do there to help make sure that people are aware of the services that are available. And the second thing is one thing we heard loud and clear, and I don't know if you all experienced this, so it's a question. When everything failed, God, I forget. I don't think they're 800 megahertz anymore. The radios, the PCERN radios, were the only way people could communicate. And so I wonder if KCRHA providers have access to that kind of equipment. Do they need it? It's just, and if you don't have an answer now, I'd love to follow up. But we heard from some folks out in the field, it was the only way they could communicate for a few days. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Councilmember Balducci. We also are doing an after action on that storm. We realized there were gaps in the policy for these sort of rare and, just sort of different kind of events. And so are addressing that and looking for the kind of feedback that you just shared about what would make this easier for local governments to communicate and what do service providers need. So very much appreciate that. And we'll continue to collect that and address that in our policies. And I love the idea of some templates. We'd like to work with you on that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bruce Harrell.
Thank you. And I like the first name basis. I didn't have a question. I just want to make a quick comment. I wanted to thank Dr. Kennison. Hey, her first name's not Doctor. I have to call her Kelly now. We're gonna on the open house. That was phenomenal. I really felt like I was getting a better feel for the amazing work I'm seeing a lot of the employees doing. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank Dorsal and Ruby for being part of this discussion. I hope to see more of you. This is, I think, a first that I've had very little interaction. I'll own it if I should have done a better job, but I think this new nimble governing board is just going to allow us to be more effective. There were a lot of people trying to do the best they could on managing the institution, the RHA, and I like the smaller model, and I think it's going to give us a better opportunity to really understand on a grassroots basis what we can do together. So I just wanted to thank Ruby and Dorsal for that, and thank Dr. Kennison for the open house. I thought it was amazing, and I don't know how often you do that, but I think some of my staff had come down with us, but that was something I think a lot of people should see. So thank you for that.
Are there further questions or comments? All right. Well, thanks to all, and Dorsal, good to see you again after quite a long time. Been acquainted for a couple decades, I imagine. And thank you for your service. We're now moving to public comment. Please, if you haven't yet and you're in person, sign up at Seattle City Hall with Austin. If you're providing comment on Zoom, you'll need to raise your hand and Austin will look around the screen and call on you. Each commenter will speak for 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes. And public comment will be open for 15 minutes or until no additional commenters are wishing to speak, whichever is sooner. We do ask public commenters, please keep comments to an item on the agenda. Austin, why don't you handle the public comment from here?
Thank you, Chair. Sharing the timer now. There it is. First up we have is KCRHA Floyd. KCRHA, you've been asked to unmute. If you would like to unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that. KCRHA?
Yes.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is KCRHA Floyd. I'm a community organizer with the LEC. I'm here to request that the Regional Homelessness Authority pay the funds owed to the LEC. The financial delay has had a significant impact on my life, contributing to housing instability and food insecurity. Additionally, I have experienced a great deal of stress as a primary caregiver of my late husband, who was diagnosed with cancer and has since passed away. Balancing these challenges while advocating for the unhoused community has been overwhelming. It is concerning that the implementation board failed to host the public meeting that was approved but never occurred before its dissolution. I believe it is now up to the governance board to ensure that the Regional Homeless Authority settles its outstanding debts to maintain its integrity. Furthermore, with the new governance board for KCRHA in place, I recommend establishing a monthly meeting schedule. This would allow the community to stay informed about developments in the homelessness sector. Thank you so very much, and I yield my time back. Thank you.
Thank you, KCRHA. Next up I have is Maria Lynn Arns. Maria, you've been given permission to speak. If you'd like to test your mic, unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Maria.
My name is Maria Lynn Arns, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit called Jimmy's Place. I'm a former member of Lived Experience Coalition, and I'm currently unstably housed. I have food insecurities. I've been able to see my neurologist on a regular basis and my cardiologist because I can't afford the copay. And I'm just wondering, because I'm not in a lot of meetings to hear what's going on, if LEC is going to get reimbursed for the hours that were worked. There were people in the community that trusted me, and they did projects for LEC, and some of them are now homeless. And so I just feel like it would be good to have a final answer, because I still have that email that says that they would pay LEC up to a certain amount for work that was done. And the funding that was done for some work was totally separate from the hoteling, which people always want to put that down as why LEC had the financial difficulties that they did. I'm advocating for people that need some type of shelter, some type of medication, some kind of food. I don't really have, just would like a final answer. And congratulations to Dorsal and to Ruby. Thank you so much for your time.
Next up I have is Elizabeth Malpen. Elizabeth, you've been given permission to talk. If you would like to unmute, test your mic, then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that. Elizabeth? Hi, Elizabeth. You are a little robotic. Elizabeth, it is difficult to hear. We can come back to you if you would like to raise your hand, and we'll come back. Next up we have is Sai S. Sai, you've been given permission to unmute if you'd like to test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that.
Thanks, Austin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, Chair Dow Constantine, KCRHA Governing Board. I am testifying today because many organizations in the community, mine included, who work with unhoused or minimally employed and unable to pay rent participants who are unsheltered, we have been told that we can't have access to any of the KCRHA systems that are managed through BitFocus and HMIS, and that there's been an across-the-board pause or freeze implemented by the KCRHA leadership. And to be frank with you, this is fairly frustrating because based on the tone of this meeting, I understand that the KCRHA is essentially starting at square zero with their new leadership. But that's not the landscape of how the continuum of care, King County's housing systems, and the lack of capacity and lack of staffing and leadership changes have impacted boots on the ground providers. So I have reached out to Ombud, who is compiling a full report on this so that the governing board has all of the details. But this is unacceptable. Waiting many, many months until these staff FTEs are filled so that someone who has decision-making authority can approve our BitFocus application and enroll us in other agencies so that we can make nominations for housing for participants who already spent many, many hours completing assessments that are mandated by HUD and the continuum of care to be in the queue for housing is extremely frustrating. And the KCRHA's staff response of sending me a list of 20 orgs and telling me to pick a random case manager to see if they can help our participants or clients, or if other orgs can do the same, is also not acceptable, because we have participants who have specific requirements with corrections.
Thank you.
And other.
Sorry, your 2 minutes are up. Thank you. Next up we have is Courtney Love. Courtney, you've been given permission to talk. If you would like to unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Courtney.
Excellent. Hello, my name is Courtney Love. I'm an organizer with the Lived Experience Coalition. As Ms. Maria mentioned, I also have an email promising funding at the level of the previous year, and that's promissory estoppel, and but it feels like Gestapo. So, but that's after a year and a half or so or more of fearing returned to homelessness, going hungry in order to feed my child, having my lights turned off, having my heat turned off, and still showing up to ensure that the voiceless have a voice through us. And I will ask you to reflect on Ms. Jaja's comments because they were so clear, concise, and beautifully said. And clearly, I do not have that kind of control over myself at this point. And quite frankly, I would like to give my time back to the person who was just speaking before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. That person would like to speak, they could raise their hand for the additional 49 seconds. I believe it was Cy S. Cy S, if you'd like 49 more seconds, please raise your hand. Asking one more time for Cy S, if you would like 49 seconds, please raise your hand. Seeing no hand, going to Michelle Eastman. Michelle, you've been given permission to speak. If you'd like to unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, Michelle.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Michelle Eastman. I am the Director of Communications for the Lived Experience Coalition, LEC, and I urge you today to pay LEC the funds owed. Other organizations who have completed the work already have been paid. I cannot stress enough, this isn't just an issue of delayed payments. These funds are critical to our coalition members' survival. Many of our members are still experiencing or on the edge of homelessness. This money is a lifeline, something that helps keep a roof over our coalition members' heads, food on the table, and a sense of stability. The delay in payment has created a ripple effect of stress, fear, and uncertainty among members who are counting on these funds to cover basic necessities. We cannot even begin to articulate the impact that this has had on people who struggle to find safety and stability every day. The promise of payment gave hope and a sense of security. Now that hope has become anxiety and depression. Paying the LEC is not just about honoring a financial commitment, it's about respecting our members' humanity and recognizing the immense value of lived experiences, labor, and expertise. With the implementation board gone, we urge you today to act now to make this situation right and put this matter on the governing committee's next agenda for a vote. I also ask that they keep the same level of access to the board meetings that existed with the implementation board by ensuring the governing board meet monthly. Thank you.
So we move over to SJ Arns. SJ Arns, if you'd like to unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for your time. What you're not hearing is every member of the Lived Experience Coalition, their leadership. They've been receiving money for X amount of time. I'm one of the people who have not got money, excuse me, for quite some time, and I'm owed several $1,000s. I would urge you, if you're going to go ahead and pay them, make sure there's some oversight to make sure that the people do get paid and not their pockets that have been getting lined for quite some time now while the rest of us sit. It has caused housing instability, food instability for a lot of people, but I promise you, they've suffered less than the rest of us. So if you would go ahead and make sure we get the money that we're owed, but give them some oversight. I mean, Dr. Green has gaslit us, told us Mayor Harrell's plans for the park rangers, claiming that's for LEC people, all kinds of stuff. So I think you should know the devil you're working with. Thank you.
Okay. Next we have is Okisha Brandon. Okisha, you've been given permission to speak. If you want to unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Okisha.
All right, my name is Okisha Brandon. I'm one of the founders and co-chairs of the Lived Experience Coalition. And with all due respect, I'm going to say my piece. Integrity, honesty, mortality, empathy, respect seem to have no home here. Just like the Washington State Lived Experience Coalition, we have been swept aside over and over again. But unlike trash, we are not going anywhere. We will not allow being thrown away. We will have and continue to work hard, but not for scraps or to be tokenized and taken for granted. We have done some great work that has gone unpaid for. We will continue to ask for what is owed until we start having to tell you to pay us. For some of us, it's a matter of getting monthly threats of being evicted and losing everything we have gained from helping build the LEC from the ground up and putting years into something we can believe will change and impact our system. We are a force to be reckoned with, and you are a huge barrier by not paying us. To ask you to do right by us and truly listen to the pain of our community, which is also your community. You may have the power and control and money, but what is the value in that with no substance besides harm? Unfortunately, my name is attached to a board causing more harm than not, and that is not what I came here to do. Thank you.
Last one to raise hand is Dion Smith. Dion, if you would like to unmute, test your mic, and then your 2 minutes will start shortly after that. Dion?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Dion.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna start. My name is Dwayne Smith. I'm part of the Lived Experience Coalition team that hits the ground running. Being a single father of 2 children, who had lost everything, who was out in the snow and the rain with his kids, the Lived Experience is like family, it's a team. Even though we had got overtaken and misunderstood and misused by some people that is greedy for their own well-being, we was never like that. We was always family. We always looked out for the ones who couldn't talk. We looked out for the ones who didn't know how to talk. We looked out for the ones who didn't know where to go to even say anything, to even talk. Being a single dad out here and had to figure it out and get the help from the LEC, you know, and have stuff that was supposed to be for us taken, but they still made a way. And that's family. The LEC deserves to get what they need. We're not coming for what we want. We're coming for what we need. We're just hoping that you can see and understand that we're not going nowhere. Like Keisha Brown said, we're not going nowhere. We're right here. Just because of somebody's mistake of greediness shouldn't stop your decision on seeing what we really do for our people. And it's not just us. And me being a single dad and still out here trying to get things done and doing it, that's more motivation than anything. And without them and their tireless hours, tireless nights, it's breathtaking. You know what I mean? And when my kids say, Dad, are we gonna be all right? I said, we're gonna be all right. You can't beat that. Especially when a little kid looking up at you saying, okay, I trust you. We need what was owed, and we appreciate you guys for listening.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes is up. Chair, we are at the 15-minute mark. However, Elizabeth Malpen did raise her hand. Elizabeth was the one that was inaudible. Is it okay if we?
Yeah, let's go ahead and see if we can hear her now.
Awesome. Elizabeth, you are given permission to speak. If you would like to unmute, test your mic.
Hello, does it work this time?
It does, Elizabeth. It works great.
Thank you. This is Elizabeth Malpen from Issaquah. I want to thank Claudia Balducci for her work and her concern about our severe weather response. I also am here in this time of very low public confidence in governmental agencies out of concern for the reputation of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. You've heard from others here how the non-payment of funds owed to the LEC harms many of those who stepped up to do the work. As a member of the board of the Continuum of Care for King County, the second largest funder of the Regional Homelessness Authority, I'm concerned that the delays and the denial of payment for services requested, plus the repeated cancellation of meetings, even to discuss the matter, reflect badly on our Regional Homelessness Authority, which is our collective applicant. Out of concern for those directly impacted and for the public support of this organization and its work, I'm urging this board to continue to address the matter as soon as possible. I only speak for myself, not for the COC board, but I really urge you as soon as possible to arrange to pay what is owed. Thank you so much for your work. And I hope that you will, as people have asked, meet monthly so that we can keep on top of what's happening. Thank you very much.
Austin,
Elizabeth?
is that everyone?
That concludes the public comment, Chair. I'll give it back to you.
With that, public comment period is closed. I would like to direct Dr. Kinnison to prepare some clear response to the various requests and statements that were made to share with the various board members so that they are able to understand the issues that were raised here today. Can you do that for me between now and the next meeting? And also, yes, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Executive.
And also, I believe we are planning to meet on a monthly basis, as the last commenter said, at least until further notice. We now move on to James Rouse and Tiffany Brooks. They lead the finance team for KCRHA. They are here to present the 2025 budget. I understand a few of our board colleagues have asked for a courtesy delay on the adoption of the budget, which we will grant. So this item will only be on for a briefing today, and then we will take action to approve the budget at our January governing board meeting. And with that, James and Tiffany, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. I am going to turn it over to Tiffany. She's going to share her screen and run through the 2025 budget that we have. Present.
Good morning, all. Please let me know if you can see my screen or not.
We can.
Perfect. Before we get started, I would like to thank each of you and your staffers for all of the hard work that they've put into helping us to finalize our 2025 budget and all of the budget adds that you and your team have added to the KCRHA. Today, we'll go over the key components of the KCRHA's budget, and I just want to apologize ahead of time. I'll be looking to a different screen, so my face will be turned. For today's agenda, we're going over the components of the KCRHA's budget. We will go through our 2025 budget by the different type of funding and funders that we receive funding for our programs and projects. And then we will also briefly touch on City of Seattle participatory budget adds that are expected to be transitioned over to the KCRHA in 2025. For the KCRHA's budget, our budget is comprised of three main components. We have our base budget, which are funds that are anticipated to be awarded to us year over year to help support and provide funding to establish programs and contracts that we transitioned from the City of Seattle and King County. These funds are anticipated to have inflationary increases year over year, so some of them will receive those increases depending on the specific fund source that they're receiving and the funder that is providing those funds. It also is comprised of a one-time funding in the past, and most notably, a lot of these funds are COVID funds or have been COVID funds in the past. However, it also will include some one-time funding for new projects for the stand-up costs for those projects. And any one-time funding that we receive from our constituents and our funders. Incremental budget changes is the third part, and that is for budget adds that we receive throughout the year or annually from our funders as they deliberate the budgets and then adopt their budgets and send it over to the KCRHA. 3% of our budget is comprised of our inflationary increases that we're receiving from the city, county, and our other funders, depending on the fund source. This year, the city of Seattle has approved a 4.4% inflationary increase, and King County has also matched that inflationary increase amount of 4.4% for their contracts as well. The KCRHA admin is approximately 8% of our overall budget. And for the one-time funding that we are receiving for 2025, that is approximately 9% of our budget. And 80% of our budget is going to our base funding and for existing contracts that we have and hold at the KCRHA.
And Tiffany, if I could just jump in and put a fine point on that. So that means that KCRHA is not making decisions about where that 80% goes. Those are going to contracts that would need to be reprocured for KCRHA to have influence over how those funds are used. So that's quite a lot of our budget, and I know that's a question that many of you have asked. Thanks, Tiffany.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Our 2025 overall budget is $206 million this year, or for next year rather. This slide is breaking down that funding by program type and by our funders. For the city of Seattle, we will receive approximately $109 million. King County, $52.9 million. North King County, that is comprised of multiple jurisdictions, and we will receive approximately $402,000. For HUD, we have $23 million, and for the Department of Commerce, it's $20.9 million, for a total of $206.8 million for 2025. And this is just a chart showing the percentage of our funding from our funders. Majority of the funding comes from the city of Seattle at 53%, King County 26%, HUD 11%, Commerce 10%, and our North King County interlocal agreement is approximately just under 1% of our funding. We also felt the need to show how our funding is allocated amongst different program types. Of course, for homelessness services, shelter services is the majority of our funding and receives the majority of our funding, followed by permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. For permanent supportive housing, the KCRHA provides supportive services for some of the permanent supportive housing within the region. And so the permanent supportive housing within our budget does go towards case management and supportive services for those projects. During 2025 budget deliberations with council members, I'm sorry.
You're fading away.
1 second, sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
No.
No? Okay, 1 minute, sorry about that.
I mean, we can hear you, but just barely, just a little odd.
Sorry, they decided to clean the roofs today, so I have roofers right above me. So I apologize ahead of time. I'll speak a little bit louder.
There you go.
If that's better.
That helps.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. I see a hand that just went up. Or is that for the sound?
Yes, the sound is still really hard to hear.
It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
James,
Sorry.
do you mind taking over this part, or if you like, I can pause it?
I mean, we're hearing pretty well right now. I don't know anyone else having problems. As long as you speak at that level into that direction, we should be okay.
All right, sounds good. Let me know if it gets too loud for you. All right, so for our 2025 budget, we do have some incremental changes, and we definitely would like to thank you guys ahead of time. And before I get through this list, because we really do appreciate the additional funding that we're receiving from our funders to help ensure that we're providing and maintaining services for participants in our programs and the programs that we fund. So the first item that we have identified here is a reduction to the KCRHA admin budget, which is approximately $85,000, which is for the administrative percentage that was allocated to us in connection to prevention and outreach services that are going back to the city of Seattle. So the city of Seattle will fund those contracts for 2025. And so that's the admin that is associated with those projects and the funding that we received from the city of Seattle. We are also removing one-time funding of $2.6 million for the city of Seattle, but I would like to highlight that through the budget process, we are receiving some additional funding to help close the gap to ensure that there will not be a loss in services for our programs and for our providers. So we are receiving an increase in transitional housing funding for an existing project for $106,000. The city of Seattle is also providing $1 million to help provide services and supporting staff members at tiny house villages. We have prevention of funding cliffs. We will receive $2.2 million from the city of Seattle to ensure that a shelter is provided with continued services and funding for the next coming years until they transition into another project. And so that project was previously funded with ARPA or Clifford funds during the COVID era. We are also maintaining our CDBG funds for the city of Seattle for $3.1 million for an existing program. It currently funds approximately about 3 projects. And so we will continue to have that funding for those projects. We are also receiving an inflationary increase of 4.4%, as previously mentioned, from the city of Seattle, and also $1.5 million for program supports for RV residents. These would be for a new project from our understanding. However, as we get more information from the city of Seattle, we can provide you with that information as we move closer into 2025 and into 2025. We are also receiving $2.2 million for a new enhanced shelter. And we'll be working closely with the city of Seattle to finalize those dollars. And we will also be standing up or receiving $3.2 million to stand up 2 new non-congregate shelters. Of the funding that we receive that is new funding and incremental increases to our budget, those do go through a procurement process where the decisions to be made through that RFP process, and agencies are able to apply for those funds when they go live within our procurement process. For King County, we do have some incremental budget increases or changes rather, but these are using existing funds that were already within the King County's budget. And so I wanted to highlight and thank King County for the transition of approximately $3.4 million of funding to programs that previously received one-time funds from the city of Seattle to ensure that we do not have any loss in units or closure of programs or projects. In addition to that, we are also receiving continued funding for programs that were previously funded with ARPA funds, and we will have some of those ARPA funds continued into next year to help provide supports for those projects. In addition to that, King County also matched, as mentioned earlier, the 4.4 inflationary increase for their funded contracts, and that will be using the Consolidated Homeless Grant, also known as CHG, to fund those inflationary increases for projects. The KCRHA admin and operations budget is approximately 8%.
Sarah, I'm sorry. Did Sarah Nelson, do you have a question about that last slide?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Tiffany, if we could just go backwards one so Sarah can ask a question.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for the interruption. I'm not going to ask a bunch of questions, but the one-time funding removed offline, can you tell me what was paid for with that one-time funding that was removed? I don't believe it was outreach, but I could be wrong. But then also, if the slide where you had the stack of funding, there was 3% inflationary increase, but this slide says 4.4, as well as Dr. Kelly said that also. So why the discrepancy?
Absolutely. We can provide you with the list. And for the 3% that's on the previous slide, that is looking at our overall budget and what percentage of the inflationary increase is a part of our overall budget. We're receiving the 4.4% inflationary increase only for our City of Seattle and King County funds. And we have other fund sources that are a part of that pie.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Please continue.
Thank you. This is just going over a breakdown of our admin and operations budget, which is approximately 8% of our overall funding that we receive for the $206 million. This is getting close to the end of our presentation. It's just a reiteration of our overall budget that was presented in one of the earlier slides to give another overview of our overall budget by the funders and program type for the $206.8 million. And we want to acknowledge and thank the city for the participatory budget ads. I do want to highlight that these ads are not included in our budget at this point. We are still pending a couple of items from the city of Seattle to ensure that when these transition over to us, they will be added to our budget at that time. However, with it not being included at this time, we did not want to give an overinflated budget for funds that have not been confirmed within our budget at this point. And that concludes our presentation. In your packet, you did receive some additional slides for the appendix where it's breaking down our funding by our funders and the particular fund sources that we are awarded from our funders. And it goes into the details for those program types and the type of funding that they are receiving from city, county, and our other fund sources.
Lamont.
Thank you, Executive. And thank you, Tiffany and James. This is very clear and easy to read and digest breakout. So thank you for your hard work. I just have one quick question. If we go back to slide 8, please. I think it's on the presentation. It's the one where it says funding by funder. Maybe it's in the original PowerPoint. Yes, that one. Thank you. On mine, it says slide 8, but sorry about that. And so when it says we receive HUD Continuum of Care 23,000, when I was looking at the COC estimated annual renewal demand report for fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2025, it looks like for Seattle King County for HUD COC, and I know HUD has like community development block grant and different streams of funding sources, right? But pertaining to the continuum of care funding source, I believe we receive an estimated annual amount of approximately 63 million. And here I see for the HUD continuum of care, 23 million. Do you know where the rest of that money is located? Is some of that perhaps in King County or City of Seattle? And I also wonder if we can tease out what is the actual amount we're receiving from the HUD Continuum of Care. So I'll pause there, but basically my question is, I believe we receive, I know we receive tremendously more than 63 million from HUD, right? But some of it is COC, Community Development Block Grant, but I believe it's closer to 93 million that we receive in King County. But if you can help me understand, like, where is the other approximately 40 million of HUD COC funding located?
Absolutely, and great question. Thank you, Mr. Green. So for this is for the funds that we receive directly from HUD, which are our COC funds. For the difference that you're asking about, those are mostly the PSH COC contracts that are still housed with King County. Those are slated to transition to us later in 2025. However, since they are not transitioned to the KCRHA to administer those funds just yet, it is not included in our budget. And you are absolutely correct. We do receive a community development block grant as well as ESG for the emergency solutions grant and program. However, those dollars are reflected in both the cities and the county's budget because they are passed through funds that we receive from those funders.
I see. And so part of the COC HUD Continuum of Care dollars that we're receiving, part of that goes to King County and then part comes directly to King County Regional Homeless Authority. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would we be able to do a budget breakout that helps us to understand the total amount of HUD COC monies that we're getting? And even if it's under King County and City of Seattle, I think it's really good to let us know how much of the dollars are actually HUD and how much of that is coming, directly from other sources. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll reach out to you to get more details of the information that you were seeking, so that we can provide you with accurate information, exactly what you're seeking.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lamont. And we'll have Kathy Moore followed by Sarah Nelson. First, Austin, is your hand up just to remind me that we need to bring up the motion in order to table it till
Oh.
January?
No, my hand's up for Member Barone in order. Because
I'm here in person, Chair Constantine.
Oh, okay. And did you?
I just had a question. Whenever it's my turn.
Yeah, you're after Kathy Moore and before Sarah Nelson. That's when I saw Austin's hand go up. So Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Tiffany, for the presentation. And I just had a question. I know that Seattle allocated money for a seasonal weather shelter in District 5, and I don't see that listed in here. Just curious where that money is going to show up in your chart. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for your question. Due to the language within that ad, it's using, I believe, underspend from 2024 or anticipated underspend from 2024. We have an underspend process that we undergo with the City of Seattle and their HSD department, which is in March. When we go through that process and when those dollars have been approved to transition over or to stay with the KCRHA at that time, we will add it to our budget at that time.
Thank you. Is there any way to note somewhere, though, that those dollars will be coming? I mean, that to make a category and put an asterisk pending underspend, or just so we know it's there and it's a matter of timing?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jorge Barone.
For the presentation, I just wanted two quick questions. So I don't have any objections to the delay of the vote until January, but I just want to confirm that that's not going to cause any problems for you all in terms of approving and paying and doing the contracting. So that's my first question. And then the second question is, I'm wondering if one of you could touch on there's a lot of references about one-time funding that is included in this proposal, and I would just love to understand where that funding is kind of allocated, like where are the areas of risk for that funding, so that we can kind of have a sense of like is there a particular program that is particularly at risk in the future in light of that one-time funding?
Absolutely. So for the one-time funding, a majority of those one-time funds are being used to backfill a decrease in other fund sources on King County's end, on King County's end. And also most of those dollars are going towards shelter services and vehicle outreach services. And we can provide you additional information if you would like to receive a breakdown of those projects.
Thank you. Yeah, we can follow up offline on that.
Okay. And for the delay in approving the budget, we still have to undergo our MSA amendment process with both the city and county to ensure that everything is finalized. If there is a vote done in January, I do not anticipate it having or causing a delay in us being able to move forward and ensure that there's continuity of services with our providers. As Kelly mentioned in her presentation, we have already started the contract renewal process with our providers. And so they're in the process of updating their budgets and getting amendments executed to authorize them to continue to use their funds into 2025. Sorry, we work with so many budget years at once. So into 2025. And so I don't anticipate there being a challenge or a stop in services due to it being delayed to January. But I definitely would not recommend extending it beyond January.
We are not allowed to extend it beyond January by our ILA. So let's bear that in mind. Sarah Nelson.
Thank you very much for agreeing to delay the vote until January. I abstained on the budget at our first meeting this year because I didn't want to just rubber stamp a budget, and then there weren't enough votes, so I to pass the budget, and then I changed, and here we are. So I now that I understand that the restructuring of the governing board and responsibilities, etc., means that we will have a new process, and I welcome that. I would like, in particular, more information on the discrete programs that get funded by line item, etc. So hopefully, I don't want to create a lot of work for people in the between now and the next meeting, but that's the sort of thing I need to know before being prepared to vote on a budget. So thank you very much for that. And to that end, I wanted to ask about the status of the system rebid, because ultimately that should be driving our funding decisions going forward. So does anybody have a status update on that?
I can address that, Council President Nelson. So our intention is to work with you all on a timeline and sort of community outreach cadence for that. I think we really need to hear from the service providers what works for them, what doesn't work for them. I think we want to add some metrics to the contracts and really think about, how we want to drive for results in our procurements. And so would anticipate getting started planning that in first quarter of January 2025. Because our budget is due, I believe, second quarter of 2025, we'll have to work out with you all sort of what the cadence of doing new procurements in. I don't think, I haven't heard a desire to do anything drastic or some big one-time shakeup. I think, right, we need to improve our contracting together overall. And so want to begin having those conversations early next year.
Thank you for that rough timeline. Personally, there was an increase in homelessness last year. I think, 23% or something like that. And so I'm not saying we have to do something drastically different, but this is where we decide what this agency thinks is the best thing to do to help people and to reduce the percentage of unsheltered homeless here. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm advocating for massive changes, but I also believe that we do need to look at, there was just an article in the Times about shelter and permanent housing and that pipeline, et cetera. And I do think that our public needs to see us having a conversation about really how we are determined to improve, not just our own performance as an agency, but the lives of people that we're serving. So anyway,
absolutely.
Look forward to that conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Lamont.
Just one last quick question around process. Given that the HUD Continuum of Care dollars coming into our community is much larger than what's stated here, and more likely approximately around 90 million, don't quote me on that. Could you share briefly what role will the COC Advisory Board, given that their role is to provide oversight over HUD COC dollars, like how would they be participating in some of this decision making with reviewing the budget and so forth, given their role and the high investment amount of HUD COC dollars coming into our community?
Absolutely. We can get more information from our COC team to give you more details on their role and what part they play. For our COC funds, as we're applying for those dollars year over year, we do involve the COC board to do the approval process for those renewals prior to it being submitted to HUD for our submission. And so they do play the role in helping with allocating those dollars and renewing the contracts that they're currently associated with for each year as we do that process annually.
I see. Thank you for that, Tiffany. I was just hoping, given the significant amount of the dollars, that perhaps the COC co-chairs would be sitting as part of the governance board, right, as we move more into this nimble place. But I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Tiffany? Is that the end? Anything from James?
It for me, and I will stop sharing.
No, that's everything. It just will, add to the, the delay in the budget. Just to reiterate that we have started our 2025 contract renewals with level funding, and being as the city and the county have finalized their budget process, we're able to utilize those numbers to be able to give contracts to providers that should allow them to not have any disruption of services, meaning that they'll be able to still submit invoices once they fully execute their contracts as early as February for January services.
Okay. Are there any further comments or questions from board members? Kathy Moore.
Thank you. To that, I know I am still hearing from providers that it is still difficult to get paid and to navigate the system. And I know that there were improvements made to that, but I'm wondering if you could just give us an update on, the software and how things are going in terms of actually getting dollars out the door expeditiously for providers, which seems to be remains an ongoing issue. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The improvements we've been able to do is really through our staff and getting resources in here to work through a cumbersome system that doesn't really work well for us, which is why we're doing this migration. The migration has taken us more time. Our third-party implementation group has not been doing such a great job, and we've been working through that. We are trying to do a very clean cutover at fiscal year end, so it's not as difficult on our providers. So we're looking at a launch at the end of January for our Salesforce system that will streamline this process and make it a lot smoother and easier and clearer for everybody to understand exactly what they've submitted, what they've been paid on, what their budgets look like, what's still available. That's the whole reason for the migration to this newer system. So we're hopeful that we're gonna get to a January 27th launch of that system. But it is as we implement any new system, it is going to be clunky at first, and there's going to be issues that we're going to have to work through as that happens. But yeah, that's where the improvements will really start to come in.
So I thought that had all already been done. I thought that was something that you were transferring over last year to this new payment system.
Yes, we've been working on it for a year. Unfortunately, the third-party implementation group missed the first go live, which was scheduled for May. They missed a second go live that was scheduled for July, and several more that happened later this year. And then we are now ready to go live, but we delayed it to January because we wanted to have a clean cutover for fiscal year end. Otherwise, it would be being as it was so late in the year, we were in November, it would have been really difficult, especially with the data migration, without getting into too many of the details. It would have been very difficult to go live this late in the year. So we're pushing it to a cleaner cutover for the data migration for fiscal year end.
Thank you. And just one last thing, I would ask that if you could each of our monthly meetings we could be updated and apprised of the progress of that, because part of the making this successful in terms of sort of changing the narrative is also for providers to feel like we're not hearing from them that they're unhappy with working with KCRHA because they're not able to get paid expeditiously. So if we could just stay apprised of that, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bruce Harrell.
Thank you. Just a sort of question on what we're going to do now in terms of the budget. I heard I really appreciate the questions that I'm hearing. What I've asked my staff to do prior to this meeting is really I want to thank KCRHA staff for being so responsive to all the questions we've had. But are we voting? I heard some people wanting to delay. I don't know what a delay does. Seems like we still have to approve this thing in a couple of weeks. Can the questions be answered after we approve it, or what does delaying it do? I guess that's the question. And I'm hearing people sort of suggest they want to delay it, but I thought we're going to vote on it today. So I just need some clarification what we're trying to do. I don't fully understand what a delay would do, even though there's some questions. So I'd soon just vote on it, but people want to delay it, that's fine. I just don't like delaying for the sake of delaying.
Sarah?
President, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't delay for the sake of delay. I would like to see the spread. I'm not suggesting making any amendments to this. I understand that this is already down the road, but the kinds of questions that I'm asking for, and I can talk with agency staff and be more clear, but number of projects or units that receive funding in 2025, number of people served, percentage of individuals anticipated to exit permanent housing to permanent housing. That was the shelter article I was referring to. And then going forward, and perhaps this would be in the bylaws discussion, how do we make amendments to the budget or to any legislation that that we put forward as a governing board or modify? So again, I am not encouraging or suggesting I have changes to the budget, but I have, as a governing body without the IB making these decisions, I asked to just be able to look over the budget for, over the course of 2 meetings. I mean, we just spent 3 months in, doing our budget. So just more information like that, and I can enumerate the questions I have offline. Thanks.
Angela Burney.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation around do we delay, do we not? I am a little concerned that the January meeting might have a quorum issue, and I heard very loud and clear that we need to pass this by the end of January. If it's questions and no amendments, I'm curious as well as to how we could possibly move this forward and still get all those questions answered. And I'd ask that of staff.
I can respond to the amendment question. For our budget, these are budgets that have been approved and adopted by both the city and county. And so any amendments that would be or could be requested will have to go through city and county approval. It's not something that we can unilaterally change on our end due to us receiving our funds from city, county, and HUD, and the HUD dollars are already assigned to existing programs. But we are more than happy to provide a list of our contracts if that is something that is desired, along with the number of units or households that are served and their award amounts, so that you can see the details of where the funding is going.
Thank you for answering that. I guess I am concerned about us being able to actually pass the budget in January, and at this point it is more of a pass-through budget because of how the funding is allocated through the county and the state and the city. And so I'm curious what my other members think of how we kind of maneuver through this, also acknowledging the other members' questions and concerns about how to parse the data and the information from the current budget.
Lamont.
Thank you. I don't believe in holding up budgets either, but I'm not sure if given our strong partnership with the COC Advisory Board and their role in the spirit of our theory of change, has the COC Advisory Board had a chance yet to weigh in and provide feedback on the budget? I think that could go a long way in building a strong partnership in this more streamlined governance. So I guess my question is, has the COC Advisory Board seen the budget and be able to and have provided feedback?
Now, conveniently, we have the COC co-chairs here.
I don't believe that we've seen this breakdown of the budget. We've seen obviously we're pretty engaged in the funding for the COC, but we haven't been provided to this context now, but it's been very enlightening. Thank you.
And I would
Yeah.
just remind
Oh,
everyone that our budget was due, the implementation board passed our budget in May. So there was a lot of documents submitted there. We are happy to update those. And I don't remember COC chairs when you all came on.
Oh,
We were elected in September.
co-chairs, but we've been on the board for 2 years almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a new COC board, and we're very much looking to improve our 2026 process, as I mentioned earlier in my report. But as for 2025, right, as others have said, we're sort of at a process now where you and your other roles, wearing your other hats, have made the decisions that were available to be made. The place to really influence the agency's budget is as we develop our preliminary budget for 2026.
And also, I'm sorry, I have a bit of context to add. They've moved the COC renewal program or the renewing process to a biennial, so it's every 2 years now. And that's why we're maybe seeing a reflection of the funds that look a little to what Lamont was speaking to. So that might be what is going on there.
all right. Kathy Moore. Kathy?
Sorry.
Yeah.
My hesitancy in voting today is just twofold. One is that the budget that my staff printed out for me last night, which I took time to read through and make notes on, is not the budget that was presented to us this morning. So I'm not sure why we're getting a different slide deck first thing in the morning from what I got yesterday. The other thing is that I would like for this budget to come back in January and have it noted that there is money for seasonal shelter in District 5 for Seattle, and the funding is pending. It needs to be in the category. So if the budget can be amended here today to reflect that, then I'm comfortable going forward. But until that's reflected here, I'm not comfortable voting on this budget.
If I may respond to
Yes,
that.
please go ahead.
The difference in the budgets that you are viewing and the one that's being presented, I'm going to assume that you are looking at the first presentation that was provided to your staffers for review. At that time, we were still pending our final numbers from both the city and the county. And so it does not reflect any budget adds that were added to our budget during council deliberations. And so this presentation was shared earlier this week or last week, I want to say, and it included the updated figures that we received both from the city and the county at that time.
Yep, Tiffany, we sent out the final packet last week, so we just need to debrief with policy staff to make sure they know where to pull down the final for this meeting. And really want to work with you on how you'd like to be, prepared for these meetings and give you a chance to ask questions. That's the balance of doing the prep 2 weeks ahead, which we had the briefing for your policy staff on December 5th. Things change here very rapidly. So we can wait and do it in real time, or we can prep in advance with the grace that things may change.
Right, and my response to that is I should not be receiving the final budget the morning of the presentation. And in fact, what I have here does include council budget add. So I'll talk to my staff, but really going forward, everything that's presented, unless there's some extraordinary reason, we should have the materials the night before, particularly
It
when
was
we're
posted a week before, Councilmember Moore. It was posted last week.
Well, I
And
don't
sent out via
believe
email.
that what I have is what you posted. So
Sorry
I'm
about
not,
that. Yeah,
we'll talk
to your
about that
policy staff.
offline, but this has been an ongoing issue with getting us updated information in a timely manner in which we can be fully prepared. If I had known that, I would have addressed the issue of the seasonal shelter earlier. So we need to work on going forward now that we're making a clean slate, making sure, and perhaps you need to reach out to all council member offices to make sure we have the most updated information. It shouldn't always be upon us to go to the website, scroll through and find out where the materials are. I would ask that you be more proactive in making sure that we have the information available to us in a timely manner.
Board Member Harold, sorry, Bruce.
Thanks,
Old,
Doc.
old habits. Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't mean to start sort of a contentious discussion. I'm not suggesting it is contentious, but let me just make my point very clearly, and that is, it seems to be a pass-through budget. And I understand my two colleagues, the two-thirds of the city of Seattle, we have questions, we have concerns. Maybe a delay makes some sense, but in my mind, it's a pass-through budget. The city council already approved the budget that's part of the 206 million. The county council already passed their part. So I'm just not sure what a delay would do. I think it makes sense just to pass the budget because it's a pass-through budget. And to the extent there's one slide on here, budget by program. And, you know, at some point we're going to look at how much are going into youth programs, how much are going into diversion, et cetera. These are discussions we're going to have on an ongoing basis as we really try to address the core issues. But it seems for purposes of today, it's just a pass-through budget. So I didn't see, again, not minimizing the questions. It seemed like we could still work back channel on the questions. And I think Councilmember Moore, Kathy, I think some of what you wanted in your district, I think was done by an underspend. I'm not positive on that one, but I don't think that changes this budget. So I'm comfortable, personally, I'm comfortable voting it out today because this is just a pass-through budget. I'd love a consensus. We're going to have some really contentious issues really to talk about in the future. I'm sure we have different approaches, but this just seems like a pass-through. So I'm comfortable voting if others are.
Well, being mindful of the time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve resolution 2024-16, which is the approval of the 2025 budget.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Angela and seconded by Ed. Was that your voice?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion. Bruce, you've said your piece. Your hand's still up though. Okay. Others? All right. All those in, oh, please.
I do.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, we approved an amount. I mean, we approved an amount that is going to the agency from the city of Seattle. And that's fine. But as I said, I will do whatever the body wants to do today in terms of voting. But we went through a whole ILA process and a restructuring of the governance board in order to be more accountable to the public in what we're spending our money on. One doesn't know when when the system rebid will happen and how that might impact what we're paying for and the mix of services that come from the 109 million that is coming from the city of Seattle. But I just, the word pass-through budget, at some point, the governing board, I believe, needs to be more, I'm looking forward to the day that the governing board is more involved in discussions on what is being paid for and what we are actually doing long-term, short-term, medium-term, et cetera. So we were told that this would not impact I'm not arguing for a delay. As I said, I don't really, it's clear where this is going, but I want whoever might be watching to know that the governing board is now has more responsibility without the IB involved. And so they used to be able to, anyway, that's my point. And I look forward to a rich discussion going forward about the programs that we're actually funding and the mix, or at least just the mix, the categories, et cetera. And the use of one-time funds for ongoing expenses, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Is there, Kathy Moore.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm going to be abstaining. And the reason I'm abstaining is because I do not want to vote on this. You are correct, Mayor Harrell, Bruce, that this seasonal shelter is underspend funding. It should have been this is a new addition to this budget. It was hard fought for, and it should be reflected in this budget. And that is my objection. That's why I would like to wait till January to have it reflected. If there had been some way to amend this budget to have it reflected, I would do so. But because that's not the case, I'm going to be abstaining, and I want the record to be very clear that this money has been approved by the city of Seattle. It will be funded through underspend, and that I expect in the next iteration of this to see that listed specifically seasonal weather shelter, District 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Lamont.
And I will be abstaining as well. I must be accountable to people with lived and living experience of homelessness. And in this position, I was appointed by the KCRHA board, and it's unclear to me their level of involvement in review in this process. And I believe that for us to build really strong relationships, we need to have transparency, and we need to be in principled and accountable relationships. And I believe that we're headed in that direction. And I believe Dr. Kelly Kennison is doing a lot of great work in that direction. But there's still a lot of improvements that need to be made. And we know that the HUD COC dollars bring in approximately 90 million plus into our community. That's a significant dollar amount. And the KCRHA board should have representation here. You know, it's like in the Revolutionary War. No taxation without representation, right? It's a kind of founding principle of our democracy. So in the spirit of all of that, I must abstain. Thank you.
Thanks. Claudia Balducci.
Thank you. It occurs to me that anything that we vote on at this board, we can vote to change in the future if we choose to do so. And so I wonder if we could take up that suggestion to request input from the KCRHA on the budget. We can vote for today. I heard that there may be a problem voting in January, and that risk is concerning to me. I don't want to enter the new year with this organization not having a budget. So I'm just going to join with those who will vote to pass the budget today. But I do wonder if we could follow up on these concerns that are real concerns that are being raised by members, come back, hear the answers, and then if there needs to be some future action to address any of this, including any input we solicit from the KCRHA, we can always take that up. So I would like to make that request as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay.
I really like what you mentioned, Councilmember Claudia. Could you make possibly a friendly amendment or something that would ensure the process moving forward, the involvement of the KCRHA board in this, that we could at least, have some type of assurance moving forward?
I would be nervously happy to try.
Thank you so much.
So let me offer as a friendly amendment, the motion is to pass the budget. And I would, there hasn't been a motion yet, has there? I'm sorry.
There has been.
Okay.
It was moved
Motion to pass
by
the
Angela
budget.
Burney. Yes.
Thank you. May I offer as a potential friendly amendment that is the motion to pass the budget with direction from the board to ask the leadership of KCRHA to look into the questions that have been raised by council members Moore, Nelson, and board member Green, including to consult with and get feedback from the Continuum of Care Board and report all of this back to the governing board.
Thank you.
So, and it's been seconded. I'm not quite sure how the staff is going to shoehorn that into the language of the motion, but I am going to take it on faith that they have the ability to do so. Who would like to speak next? No one? All right, perfect.
If I may, this is James Rouse. The Continuum of Care HUD, they are involved in the overall application and budget process for the money that we receive. They're not involved in this part of the budget process. So the KCRHA HUD dollars that we receive, they're fully involved in the applications and the budget process there as it goes out to the providers. And that's where their involvement begins and ends. They're not involved in this overall budget process. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and understood. And then the 23 million versus the 63 million, the 23 million is what KCRHA receives. At this moment in time, we do not have access to what King County or City of Seattle receives. We can get that information and share it, but we don't have those dollars or any control over those dollars.
Right. Okay, back to board members. If there's no further discussion, Austin, will you please call the roll?
Chair? Can I
Yes.
just ask, are we accepting the amendment that?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
We have to vote on
The
that
word
first.
friendly was mentioned, so I didn't call for a vote on it. Board Member Bernie, do you accept the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you have the item as amended. Austin, please call the roll.
This is to approve resolution 2024-16. Member Constantine,
Aye.
member Barone,
Aye.
member Balducci,
Aye.
member McWhorter Jr.,
Abstained.
member Green,
Yes. Aye.
member Bernie,
Aye.
member Prince,
Aye.
member Backus,
Aye.
member Moore,
Aye.
member Nelson,
Aye.
and member Harrell.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes with 10 ayes. And
By
one
vote,
abstention.
resolution 2024-16 as amended is adopted. That takes us to resolution 2024-17, which is the approval of the 2025 meeting time and cadence of the governing board as required by the new ILA. And I would entertain a motion to approve resolution or motion 2024-17.
So moved.
To move by Angela
Second.
Bernie and seconded by Ed Prince. Could staff just provide us with a one-sentence overview of the meeting time and cadence, just so we're all clear on what we're approving?
I'm happy to, Chair. It will be a monthly cadence on the third Thursday of every month at 10 to noon. So same time as it is today.
All right. Is there a discussion on this motion? Angela.
Thank you. I appreciate trying to schedule all of us for annual or monthly visits, monthly meetings. But I am concerned with some of them have some conflicts with standing meetings from some other organizations. And so I'm going to vote yes on this, but I hope that we might maybe in January, February, have a discussion about possibly adjusting the schedule to ensure we're not conflicting with those.
Yeah. A lot of regional meetings are on Thursdays, so with many organizations. So by the January meeting, if you could inventory all of those so that we can figure out how to navigate our way through them. Nancy Backus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Angela. The first meeting itself has the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the Sound Transit Executive Board meeting at the same time. So those are in conflict. And the June 19th is a holiday, I believe, for everyone. And then there are a couple others in February and September where I know that Ed and I would not be able to attend because of AWC board responsibilities.
Okay. So again, Austin and Kelly and others, if we can pull together a comprehensive calendar of Thursday meetings so we can figure out how to allow everyone to attend every meeting would be helpful.
Yes, about 2 months ago, I worked with everyone's schedulers to ensure that this time was able to work, but seeing these new flags, we will work to make sure that they are ironed out.
SRC, GMPC, they're all,
Yeah.
It's a million meetings, a million acronyms and a million meetings. Is there any further discussion? All right.
Can I say, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
I just want to appreciate staff. This is not bad considering how much you had to dodge. So I look forward to fixing the few problems that appear to still remain. But it surprisingly avoids most of the major standing meetings on the Thursdays. Thank you.
Right. Austin, could you call the roll?
Yeah, absolutely. Member Constantine.
Aye.
Member Barone.
Aye.
Member Balducci.
Aye.
Member McWhorter Jr.
Aye.
Member Green.
Aye.
Member Bernie.
Aye.
Member Prince.
Aye.
Member Backus.
Aye.
Member Moore.
Aye.
Member Nelson.
Aye.
And Member Harrell, sorry.
Aye.
Chair, it passed unanimously with 11 A's.
By your vote, resolution 2024-17 is adopted. That brings us to the end of today's meeting. Is there, we're going to have a motion and second to adjourn rather than doing it by the fiat of the chair. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chair, if I may, there was a discussion earlier today, and then we heard the public comment regarding the LEC. I would like to be able to ask this board to be able to take that up on the next meeting. If we can get a resolution made, if that's possible.
Okay, board members, you heard me ask the CEO, executive director, to come back to us with information about the requests that were made in the public comment period. Does anyone wish to add anything to that?
Chair, additionally, due to OPMA requirements, this is a special meeting, so the agenda does have to be strictly.
Okay. So we can't bring up additional items, but we can provide additional direction to Kelly.
That is correct.
All right. So Kelly, could you tell me how you were able to respond to what we heard in the public comment today and to share information with the members?
Absolutely. So when this came to my attention, the finance team and I reviewed all of the documentation submitted by the LEC and all of the correspondence from KCRHA back, and concurred with previous CEO decisions that the documentation is not sufficient and there was no contract in place. I have a memo for the board documenting everything that was submitted and our assessment of that, and will happily provide that. We also have the records for what was paid out and can share that. But we don't believe this is something that we're able to do from 2 years ago. There isn't necessary documentation.
You've already prepared a memo for the board.
I have.
Okay, so then I assume we'll be able to receive that fairly quickly.
Yes.
Okay. And that will allow us then to each of us examine it ourselves and have a conversation about it. Is there anything further on this point, Lamont?
Yes, I would say that there wasn't a contract, but there was an email from Meg Barkley stating that the LEC would be paid for its work at a previous amount. And there was a request for several pieces of work that we did do and complete. And in addition, regarding to information, we never received a request for additional information. So if they needed something in a different format or requesting additional information, you'll see in the chains of emails with the former CEOs and current, there was never a request for additional information, and our CFO sent all of those information and all that backup information, and the LEC was never paid. We utilized reserve funds to pay people, and there's still a significant amount that is remaining. So it would be nice to get this resolved. We're not trying to be financed. We're not trying to get something that is not owed us and owed the people. So we're hoping that there could be a transparent process to resolve this as soon as possible. Thank you.
And Kelly, is this series of communications that Lamont just referred to reflected in the memo that you've prepared?
We can make sure they're included as an appendix, yes.
Okay, that would be helpful, clearly, so that the board members can see them for themselves. Sarah?
Are the amounts that we're talking about here, what was committed and what was paid also in the memo, or could you please include that in the memo? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. If there's nothing further, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 And those opposed? Thanks so much, everyone, and we will see you in January. We are adjourned.
Oh.